Haters acting like they wanna know me. Hardly ain't no phony. Try to check me, it's a warning.
Let's go!
Alrighty, we should be live. Nathan Burnett, episode 45. Before we get into it, we do have some stuff to address first. Obviously, I have not uploaded in a while, so I apologize for that. You know, I am a college kid after all, and I know I use that excuse a lot whenever I don't upload, but I had 3 or 4 projects due yesterday. So now that I have finished them and turned them in yesterday, and luckily I have today off of work as well, I am able to finally sit down and record with you guys. And it is 11 p.m. whenever I record this, so that gives you an idea of how busy I am even on my days off. So yeah. But hopefully here soon I can get back into the upload schedule and everything will be good to go. Because, I mean, March Madness happened and I didn't even upload a single video on it. But that is what we are here to discuss today, because this March Madness was crazy and I wanted to talk about it for a while. Like I had something to say about every single game and I wanted to sit down and talk about it, and I just didn't get around to it, and March got away from me, unfortunately. But now the tournament is over, and we can dive into every single game, which is great. A few other things. I know the bar at the bottom for you video watchers looks a little weird. Photoshop is not working for me for whatever reason, which is what I use to create the overlays and create the thumbnails and everything. So I had to add the 5 sort of in MS Paint. So it looks a little weird, but it's better than having the wrong number on there. So hopefully I can get Photoshop to work here soon so I can, you know, start making my thumbnails, fix the overlay, all that good stuff. And last couple things is, I know we hit 500 subs. That's a great milestone. We're actually accelerating past that really well. We're already on 505, which is cool. I know some of you are probably wondering, you know, where is the 500 sub special? So basically what I'm going to do for that is I do have something fun planned. We're going to combine the 500 sub special and the 50th episode special. So those two will go together because we are doing something pretty big for it. And those two will basically be the same event. For those of y'all wondering. So stay tuned for that because it's going to be a lot of fun. And then last thing is I wanted to add a new segment to the podcast that I think y'all will be excited for. So I do have sort of these segments on the podcast that I want to try and do every week. I know I haven't in a while. I have Loser of the Week for the trophy back there, which I haven't done in a while, but I want to start doing that again. But also I want to add another one, which I won't do every week, but I want to try and do once a month, and it's going to be sort of a scouting thing. So this will start next season since March Madness just ended, but this is going to be sort of a scouting profile type thing, and it's going to be called Posers versus Bulldozers. I was trying to make it rhyme. I might work on the title a little bit. But basically, this is where we're going to look at a player in college. And we're basically going to look at their profile. And we're going to look at their profile. Oh, and lose in the chat there. We're going to... The new segment's going to be like looking at the college player and breaking them down and saying whether or not they are a poser. Basically, they're overhyped and they're overrated. Problems either on the court or off the court, or if they're a bulldozer, which means they just bulldoze a competition. Maybe they're underrated, or maybe they deserve the hype that they get. All that good stuff. And that will basically be the new segment. So that's sort of all the announcements out of the way. So let's go ahead and get into the March Madness breakdown, because, I mean, this March Madness was insane to say the least. Um, where do we even begin? I mean, I wrote down some notes here that I'm gonna go off of. So Alabama lost, and shockingly, um, Alabama losing was not that surprising to me. I had San Diego State going. By the way, for those of y'all that are watching the recording back and wondering who's in the chat, this is one of my really good friends. She does not watch basketball, but she is watching to support me, and that's why she's being silly in the chat. So, and I think it's funny. So, um, but San Diego State. Trying to get my train of thought. San Diego State, I had all the way going into the Elite Eight, right? I didn't, or no, I had them in the Final Four. I had them going all the way to the Final Four, and a lot of people doubted me, and told them to just wait and see. And not only did San Diego State go into the Final Four, they went all the way to the final game. So a lot of people were questioning that decision. Like, I had a lot of people in my NBA group chats. I had a lot of people on the last episode where we made the bracket, doubting my San Diego pick. And again, I just said, let's wait and see. And Alabama lost, and Arizona also lost. And again, I wasn't surprised because there always ends up being a one seed that loses in either the first or second round. Um, where are the V's? I'll just leave it without context for now. Um, uh, every time I read the chat, I get like lose my train of thought. Um, yeah, Alabama. There's always at least a one seed that loses in the first or second round, and with this season, I said it was going to be the season of upsets, and it was. If we go back to, let me share my screen here. I literally made a bracket. I wanted to show this to you guys. I made a bracket that was intentionally supposed to be filled with upsets, right? And it's called the fun bracket because it was meant to be bad. And this season had so many upsets that the bad bracket, the fun bracket, didn't even do that bad. It almost did as well as my normal bracket. Obviously, like, the rank up here is not that great, but like points wise, like, I have 70 points on my normal bracket, and I have 63 points on the fun bracket, right? So, I mean, this season was crazy for upsets, and I said that Alabama was gonna go in cocky. They were going to be sloppy, and that's exactly what happened, which caused them to lose. If you go to the San Diego versus Alabama highlights, Alabama just was very slow with their defense. They were very sloppy. I think they just went in feeling like they were the number one seed. They could get anything done, and that caused them to lose because, again, if you watch the highlights, they had a lot of turnovers, and it's college basketball. A lot of people hate on college basketball because it's sloppy in and of itself, like its nature is sloppy. So I can't really hate on Alabama specifically for that because college basketball is just sloppy in itself. But Alabama, when I was watching those highlights, really stuck out with bad turnovers and just easy mistakes that ended up being their downfall. And I think they just, again, went in and they weren't expecting SDSU to put up as much of a fight as they did. They sort of got in their own head, and they just didn't perform well because they just didn't plan efficiently, didn't perform efficiently as they should have. And again, we're just sloppy. So that's sort of my breakdown of the Alabama versus SDSU game. Even though SDSU lost in the final, I still think that SDSU had an amazing run, which we'll get in here into here in a minute. But we'll go ahead and move on to some of the other teams. So we have Gonzaga versus UCLA. Amazing game. Gonzaga, there isn't really much to say about because Gonzaga kept a lot of the same team that they had last year, aside from Chet, who obviously got drafted into the NBA. But they still had Timmy there. Timmy was a huge part of their offense and defense, just like he was last year, even with Chet. And they just went out there and played. I mean, Gonzaga versus UCLA has been a huge rivalry for a long time, and you see Lou in the chat earlier. I had UCLA winning in my bracket, and they ended up losing. But it really was just a toss up. Again, UCLA versus Gonzaga, huge rivalry for years. They end up facing each other in the tournament almost every single season, and every single season it is an amazing game to watch. Almost always ends on some amazing moment, and this season was no exception. UCLA versus Gonzaga was an amazing back and forth game, and it was just really shot for shot. You know, they kept up with each other really well. Again, being that massive rivalry, being very even with each other. And UCLA was actually on top until Gonzaga, of course, went and shot that logo shot, which, again, like I said, every UCLA versus Gonzaga game seems to end in some incredible fashion. So they hit that they hit that logo shot. It ends up going in. Gonzaga is up 79-76, and UCLA tries to do the same, and UCLA just couldn't let it go in. But if UCLA did let it go in, you know, it wouldn't have been much of a surprise because again, it's back. It was back and forth all game. That game really could have gone either way. UCLA had amazing defense the whole game, the whole season, but it just wasn't enough against Gonzaga because again they shot it from the logo. So so what's up to Lou and Kiwi in the chat here? I mean, if y'all are watching, y'all can go ahead and drop a follow. That would be appreciated because I'm trying to hit 50. I got the bar in the bottom left. So so that's really all for UCLA versus Gonzaga. Again, me and my friends sort of have this inside joke that we hate on UCLA, but it really was a great game. I mean, yeah, that's all I can say for that game. It was back and forth. So for UConn we'll get into later. I want to save that to the end. SDSU again I'll save to the end because that was the finals game. Baylor, I was not surprised losing as well. Ash, Kiwi, and Lou all here, the three amigos. But Baylor, they had great offense. They just had literally no defense. Was the problem, and defense does end up being a huge part of March, which we'll get into. But the Baylor just had no defense whenever they were going up against whoever they were playing, and that's why a lot of people predicted that they would lose to Memphis, they would lose to whatever other team they ended up facing, and they just ended up not doing that well. So if I look at the official bracket here, I want to see how much they lost by because I don't remember. So Baylor versus Creighton, right? Creighton won by 9 points, and Creighton is only a 6 seed. So if we look at Baylor versus UCSB, Baylor won by almost 20 points, but that's because they were facing a 14th seed. So again, Baylor is very strong offensively, so they can do well against the much lower seeds. The problem is whenever they face seeds that are closer to their seed or higher seeds to them, just like Cretan, and they just don't have the defense to keep up. And I think they really got humbled, and they just were not able to keep up. Is the problem? If we go to Tennessee, Tennessee is the next team I want to talk about. It's basically the opposite of Baylor. They have decent defense. The problem is Tennessee is not a very good scoring team. They just they score enough to get into the tournament, obviously, but they weren't gonna make it that far. Originally, I had debated about putting them in my final four, but if we look at their scores, even against Louisiana, they only scored 58 against Louisiana. Each of their scores were below 70, with two of them being in the 50s. Um, they just don't score that much. I mean, it's as simple as that. Whenever they played Duke, they ended up winning in double digits, but that's because Duke didn't score that many points either. And if we go to the Duke versus Tennessee game, uh, a lot of their shots were coming from 3-pointers, and the one of the massive reasons that Tennessee won versus Duke is simply because they won the uh, rebound battle, they won the assist battle, and they won the steals and turnover battle. They won in almost every single stat, but scoring wise, again, they didn't score that much. They're not a very high scoring team, and they FAU was able to sort of use that against them, outscore them, and go on to play Kansas State, which we'll get into later. But Tennessee just was not as efficient on was just not as efficient on offense as they needed to be. So once again, my chat is going off with some inside jokes between me and them, which I'll definitely text them about later. So, um, who do I want to talk about next? How long have we been recording? Only 17 minutes. Wow. Okay. Um, thanks, Lou, for the follow. Um, trying to think of like how I can break these teams down more, but there isn't really that much else to say about Tennessee. Again, their weakness is their offense, and I know I just said like defense matters in March, but so does offense. Um, I mean, if you have an amazing defense but a low offense, then the other team is gonna just shoot it as much as they can, even if you have a good defense, and they might outscore you by 1 point, they might outscore you by 10 points, but either way, they're outscoring you. So next we'll move on to Purdue. So this one is probably one that I can talk about for a while because again, this March Madness was a huge March Madness, so I don't want this episode to be short. That's why I'm trying to keep an eye on how long I've been recording. But Purdue, I think their weakness is pretty obvious. They relied far too much on one person. And I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but I actually forgot his name. Let me look it up real quick. Zach Edey, that's right. I knew it was Zach something. All right. They relied far too much on Zach, right? And we see the same thing in the NBA when these huge teams lose. When a team relies far too much on one player, they simply just end up losing because it's easy to. Y'all probably hear my roommates in the back screaming. Sorry about that. But when a team relies far too much on one player, um, it's easy to build a defense against them. And I talked about this back when LeBron broke the scoring record, where OKC, I'm pretty sure they were playing that night, ended up winning the game by a large margin. And that was because that night was like known as the night that LeBron was going to break the scoring record. And so they really clamped down on LeBron, and the Lakers really had no other offensive strategy besides giving LeBron the ball. And Purdue, it was sort of the same thing. Purdue didn't have too much of an offensive strategy besides give Zach the ball. And even on like massive NBA teams, like I said, like you can name a lot of teams that have problems with that as well. Before the 76ers got Harden, it was give Embiid the ball. With the Nuggets right now, even though the Nuggets are the number one seed, it's give Jokic the ball. The Bucks are also the number one seed, and it's give Giannis the ball. Um, but with the Bucks, they're able to pass out more to Drew Holiday, to Middleton. You know, they have some extra pieces there. Um, the 76ers now have Harden, which helps a lot with that, and everything else. But with Purdue, if you can lock down Zach Edey, then they like Purdue can do nothing else. And if you go and watch the college ESPN breakdown, like I did, and they talk about many of the things that I'm about to bring up, which is FAU really or FDU, sorry, really focused on their strengths, which was small ball essentially. They knew Zach Edey was going to be a tall player. They knew that Zach was going to be utilized a majority of the time. And so FAU said, okay, we have small players. We're going to get down low. We're going to be quick and efficient. We're going to push the pace. And that's exactly what they did. And Purdue also, and this again is something that was brought up in the college ESPN breakdown, was Purdue sort of was in their own head a lot like Alabama that I talked about earlier, because Purdue the last 3 years has had a history of losing to higher seeded teams early in the tournament. So they sort of, even though they were the number one seed, and you know they have this super hyped Zach Edey player, they sort of have this fear going in to lose, and that fear is what ultimately led to them losing. It's sort of self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. But again, FAU focused FDU. I keep saying FAU because FAU obviously went very far in the tournament. But FDU, they really focused on their strengths. They got down low. They were quick. They shot a lot from the three. And even though Zach is a tall player, which is why a lot of people know about him, height and size can make you very slow, obviously. And if you go and watch the highlights, even with Zach being as tall as he isn't getting that many rebounds. And that's because even with his height, again, he has a very slow vertical, and it can take him a while to get up and jump to get those rebounds. So then you have the FDU players in comparison that may be like an entire foot shorter, but they're jumping up and down like they're on pogo sticks, and they're getting those rebounds, which really is what led to their success. If we go to the stats, you know, Purdue does win the rebound battle, but again, FAU just really pushed the pace of that game, and they were quick. They were getting down low. They kept Purdue to a really small shooting percentage, because again, they were able to focus a lot on Zach, which was their main piece. And they just used their quickness to their advantage. And they really showed that they weren't going to be put down easily. They were going to play basketball the way that they know how to play basketball, and they were going to force Purdue to play basketball the way that they play basketball, and that really worked. So they did a really good job of that, and yeah, FDU did an amazing job upsetting Purdue, and they were really smart about it, and that comes down a lot to the coaching as well, to be able to tell the players to focus on their strengths and force the opponent into the position that you want them to be in, and everything. So if we talk about UVA, the last couple years, they won a championship in 2019. Whenever I predicted them to win, which was really cool. That's why I got some. You can't really see it right now, but I have some Virginia stuff up there. And the UVA game really just comes down to the final play. Um, and much like the UCLA versus Gonzaga game, it was very back and forth. Um, and it really just comes down to the last play. And the problem with UVA was how they inbounded that ball. They inbounded the ball and passed the ball way too close to the baseline. And because of that, they were able to sort of surround UVA towards the baseline. And I'm pretty sure it was Furman they played. Let me double check. Uh, yeah, Furman. Um, the Furman players were joking about how the UVA player, just sort of chucked the ball, but there isn't much else he can do in that situation. And whether the Furman players realized it or not, that was a really good play for them to basically, I think it was the Hawks. I might be wrong, but I'm 90% sure it was the Hawks. Did the same thing to Embiid, where Embiid basically had two choices, and that was to step out of bounds and force a turnover, or chuck the ball and hope for the best. And that's all UVA could do. So while everybody jokes about, UVA just chucking the ball to lose, again, there's nothing else that they can do. And then, of course, Furman ends up getting that ball, and they shoot it, and they end up winning and upsetting UVA. But that game, again, like UCLA versus Gonzaga, was very back and forth, and it just came down to that final play where Furman was able to take it. But that's all from Furman's defense, and again being able to sort of force that UVA player to the baseline where he has to throw it. If we talk about Kansas State has been sort of my team to watch, and I feel like a majority of people's team to watch throughout this season. And there's one reason for that, and that's Marquise Noel. And I mean, I honestly could just leave it at that. I could say Kansas State, Marquise Noel, move on. Um, Marquise Noel has been an amazing player all season. He set a new record for assist in the NCAA. Even though I'm not from Kansas myself, I have no relationship to Kansas State really. Ironically, a lot of or some of my family actually likes Kansas, not Kansas State. So going for Kansas State with that rivalry is a bit ironic, but Marquise Noel has been an amazing player, and he's had his ups and downs this season. He'll miss some really easy shots, but then make really hard shots. I know a lot of people were joking. In one of the games he played, he missed like a wide open layup, and then immediately afterwards he made like a step back three without looking. So again, he had a lot of ups and downs, but he's a phenomenal guard. He again set a record for assists, so he's really able to view the floor and make those plays that he needs to make. And his 3-point ability is amazing as well for a guard. Again, earlier in the season, he was getting comparisons to Steph Curry and everything like that. But it's unfortunate that we probably won't see him drafted because, uh, again, I talked about that in a previous episode. There's so much that goes into him uh, that for reasons why he won't be drafted. But I saw a lot of people comparing him to Isaiah Thomas and Nate Robinson because of his ability to play ball at such an amazing level while being the size that he is. So next we can go into Princeton. So I think Princeton versus Arizona, sort of a similar thing to SDSU versus Alabama. It was a very slow game in the beginning, and Arizona was putting up some pretty good numbers against Princeton, and it didn't seem like it was going to be an upset at first. But the problem is with that, Arizona started getting a lot slower on defense. Again, started to get a little bit sloppier like Alabama. And I think Princeton started to notice that even without a timeout being called. And Princeton started cutting into the basket a lot more and just started doing these plays that really took Arizona down because Arizona was just being too sloppy and far too slow. And Princeton sort of said, let's push the pace a little bit. Let's make this a little bit faster. And they were able to really push the pace against Arizona and beat Arizona by a couple of points because Arizona was just playing too slow. They didn't go into that game expecting it to be a fast-paced game, and Princeton said, let's make it a fast-paced game, and they ended up winning. Um, Again, I don't know how much further I can really dive into that because I think that's really encapsulates it, but Princeton really was able to push the pace of that game, which really helped them succeed. So the last one I have on here is Houston versus Miami, and then we'll get more into San Diego and UConn. So San Diego State, Miami, sorry. Miami has been an efficient team this entire season. For some of you that know, Jeremy actually um, goes to UCF. He works as one of their cameramen, so he texts me about UCF and Miami all the time. And Miami and Houston have actually played earlier this season outside the tournament, and Miami won. Um, and it was just one of those things where if Houston can't shoot well, then they can't shoot well. And Houston just couldn't shoot well, and Miami could. And Miami ended up beating them by a significant margin because they have uh, these phenomenal guards that are able to, put up these 3-point shots and really shoot efficiently. And Houston just that night, for whatever reason, was not able to do that. And Miami, didn't hold back when Houston couldn't shoot. So there isn't much else to say about that game. It was a phenomenal game for sure, but Houston just could not win. So now I want to get into UConn versus SDSU. SDSU, once again, was a team that a lot of people doubted, and I didn't want to doubt them. And with the Alabama game, again, Alabama doubted them. SDSU went in and they went crazy. They were capitalizing on Alabama's sloppiness. They were doing crazy dunks and everything that were just embarrassing to Alabama. And they continued to do that throughout. And they continued to really fight to the end in every single game. Like, half of their games were won on buzzer beaters. because they really just played to the end. And one reason I had them go so far is because of their defense, and defense can mean a lot in March. But again, you need to have that offense to back it up. And uh, UConn had both that offense and defense, which is one reason that they were able to do so well. If we go to, let me try and share my screen again here. So this is UConn versus STU. So both teams were just sort of throwing up shots. And if you watch that game, it was admittedly a little sloppy because, again, both teams just really wanted it and they were just kind of throwing up whatever shots they could. But UConn won the rebound battle. They were able to move the ball a lot more. They got more blocks defensively, and they just shot a lot better. But if we take a look at these rebounds here, this trend continues for every team that they played, where they beat the team in rebounds in almost double digits every single time. Versus Miami, they won the rebound battle by 9. Versus Gonzaga, we have 48-40. Every team that UConn played, they had almost 10 more rebounds than the other person. And that really goes to show that UConn was being efficient on both ends of the floor. And that's what really ultimately led them to winning this championship. Because, again, a lot of people are talking about the that they uh, margin that they won each game by. And that's because they were able to defend well to prevent the other team from scoring. And then they were also able to be efficient on offense and convert on their possessions a lot, very efficiently, and do a good job of that as well. And if you're able to be efficient on both ends of the floor, I mean, what else is there? I mean, it really just boils down to that. If you can keep your opponent from scoring and score yourself, that encapsulates pretty much 100% of the game. And UConn did a excellent job at both of those. So UConn, as much as I loved SDSU, and I sort of wanted SDSU to win because, again, everybody doubted them at the beginning of the season. UConn did an amazing job at making it to the finals and winning that championship. But I'm still happy that SDSU made it all the way to the final because, again, they were doubted for a while. And if I can find the screenshot, I should have it. I screenshotted when my bracket was in the top 200 brackets of all time, or at the time. And that is because I predicted SDSU making it to the Elite Eight. And besides Purdue, if we go to my bracket here, let me share my screen one more time. So I had Houston winning it all. So once Houston lost, a lot of people's brackets were broken. So I had Houston going all the way, and then my final four was San Diego, Purdue, Houston, and UCLA. So with UCLA losing, I dropped from 200 to I think 4,000, and then when Houston lost, I dropped down to like 70K, and now obviously I what's it called? I ended up in the 88,000s, but a lot of these picks ended up being really correct, which I'm proud of. Again, UCLA losing to Gonzaga sort of messed me up. Kansas losing to Arkansas really screwed me up because I really thought it was going to be a Kansas versus UCLA matchup. But everything else besides Houston and Purdue losing was pretty accurate. And I honestly, again, should have not had Purdue go as far. I should have picked FDU because of what I talked about earlier. Purdue was going to rely a lot on one guy, and that ended up not happening. Or I mean, ended up not working out. But SDSU again, uh, a lot of people predicted they were gonna lose second round, and they ended up making it all the way to the final, which I'm really proud of because I had them over here in the final four, and then they ended up making the final. So, but that's sort of the last thing for March Madness. So I want to go ahead and talk about some other stuff in the realm of NCAA. I want to go ahead and talk about something that I don't think I've brought up on this podcast before, or if I haven't brought it up that many times, and that's actually women's NCAA. So this has been getting a lot more attention recently. I know there's a bit of controversy between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark right now, and I don't really want to touch that because again, that can get like really political, and there's controversy around that. I honestly don't care that much about it. And even Caitlin Clark doesn't really care about it. Again, like everybody's sort of making it this big deal, and some people are bringing like race into it, and I really don't think it's that deep. Like it's not that big. Uh, Everybody's trying to make this story about it and blow it up when it's really not that deep. Even Caitlin Clark herself was like, that's part of the game. It is what it is, and that in that sort of competition, there's gonna be a lot of trash talk and stuff like that. So, but I just wanted to talk about each player individually and really shout them out, because again, like it's a shame that we don't talk as much about women's sports. Um, but Caitlin Clark has been going off and really bringing attention to the NCAA for the women's division, which is really cool. And she's been going off. I mean, just watching highlights of her has really been impressive. And she's been drawing these comparisons that I've been looking at. Charles Barkley was talking about the way that she can really move the ball up the floor, comparing her to Jason Kidd and everything. And if you look at the highlights, you can really see that. And if you look at her numbers as well, they also support that. With she has I think it was 8.2 assists per game, which if you look at the WNBA numbers, even in college, that is more than the leading assist or the assist leader for the WNBA, who in the WNBA right now has 7.0 assist. So she is averaging over an entire assist more than the leader in the WNBA. So she's really able to have that court vision and make plays and get assist, which is a really good ability. And she sort of has that whole package of a player, which is really impressive. And then that's just talking about her assist. I mean, if we go into her shooting, that's a whole other comparison. If you look at her highlights, half of her shots were from the logo. And I think I was reading there was one game that she scored 70 points out of the entire team's 97 points. And I mean, she was just going off, and she can shoot it really from everywhere. Of course, because she can shoot it from everywhere, a lot of people are making the NBA comparison of Steph Curry. But I think we can create a WNBA comparison of Sue Bird. Sue Bird is one of the most well-known NBA players, and that's for good reason. She has a phenomenal game. She did that one commercial with Steph Curry recently. I forget what it was commercial for, but she got paired up with Steph Curry for a commercial, and that's because she is the WNBA Steph Curry, and I mean her 3 point percentage is in the 40s, and that's just incredible. But uh, I don't know what else you can expect from the daughter of Larry Bird. Larry Bird was known for basically never being able to miss a shot, and being in a lot of people's top 10 of all time for the NBA, and Caitlin Clark is really making a name for herself, and I think she's bringing a lot more attention to women's sports, which is really cool. And I think we'll definitely start hearing her name a lot more with the way she's been performing. So then we can get into Angel Reese. So Angel Reese is another phenomenal player, but for a much different reason. She with her comparison, I basically drew comparisons to three different players with very similar games, and that is Shaq, Giannis, and Rodman. And if you go and watch highlights of her, I think that comparison can be made very clear. Um, Whenever you look at her, she plays very aggressive. She crashes the glass. She's jumping up. She's getting rebounds. She fights for the ball on rebounds. She pushes through defenses whenever she's scoring in the paint, and I mean that's really all I can say. And I know I'm not talking as much about her as Caitlin Clark, but I mean it's just because I don't know how else to put it into words. Again, she has really that comparison to Shaq, to Dennis Rodman, where she just plays aggressive, and I think that's really admirable. And crashing the glass like that is really impressive, and a testament to her game, because she had a game recently where she had 25 points, 24 rebounds, and again that just shows how much she fights for those rebounds, where she's able to have almost as many rebounds as points, and really fighting on the glass. And Bill Russell and again Dennis Rodman are the only two players that have had more rebounds than points. And I think that Angel Reese really has that in her game to do something similar, where she can just be a rebounding machine. Steven Adams in the NBA is also really well known for that, where he's averaging about 11 to 12 rebounds a game, but only 8 points a game. And that's really his sole purpose on the team, is just to get rebounds, to get possessions for more possessions for the team, and then let somebody else score. And that's not to say that Angel Reese herself can't score, because again she had a 25-point game with those 24 rebounds, but she just is an amazing rebound machine. So um, with all that said, we can go ahead and get into the playoff predictions for the NBA, because the playoffs, or I should say the regular season, is starting to come to an end, which means that playoffs will be starting soon. So let's go ahead and look at the NBA standings here. I already wrote down my predictions, but I'll go ahead and show the standings real quick. So as you can see, Bucks first seed, Celtics second seed, 76ers third, Cavs 4, Knicks 5, Nets 6, Heat 7, Hawks not 8, and so on. Western Conference, Nuggets, Grizzlies, Kings, Suns, Clippers, Warriors, Lakers, Pelicans, Timberwolves, Thunder. So if I go, obviously we don't know what the matchups are, but let me stop sharing my screen real quick so that I can pull this up. We don't know what the matchups are, but there are some Fox News sort of predicted what the matchups would be, so we can go ahead and show that here. So Milwaukee Bucks versus the winner of the 8th seed play-in, Celtics versus 7th seed. So it's Heat versus Hawks, and then Raptors versus Bulls. So And then 76ers versus Nets, Cavs versus Knicks. So if we go to my predictions here, I basically said obviously the Bucks are going to win their 8th seed matchup. You know, they just played the Bulls last night even without Middleton and won by almost 20 points or 20 points. I can't remember. Last time I saw the score, it was like 101 to 89, I think. So it might have been over 20 points, but I have the Bucks going all the way to finals because the Bucks or the um, excuse me, the Nets and the Knicks will lose in the first round. So the Cavs and the 76ers will advance. The 76ers then will then play the Cavs, and I have the 76ers advancing. And then the Bucks will play the Celtics. I have the Bucks taking the Celtics in 6 or 7 games, just like last year whenever they went to 7 games without Middleton, and then the Bucks ended up losing. But I have the Bucks going all the way to the finals this year. So then it would be Bucks versus 76ers, Eastern Conference Finals, and I have the Bucks taking that again. And so then it moves on to the Western Conference, where if we go down to the Western Conference, Denver plays the 8th seed, Grizzlies play the 7th seed, Kings play the Warriors, Suns play the Clippers. So I know a lot of people think that the Kings will be out the first round because they don't have that much playoff experience. But I really think that the Kings can make a push this year. So I have the Kings make the second round. Lakers and Timberwolves win the play-in, but both the Timberwolves and the Lakers obviously lose the first round. So then it's Nuggets versus Grizzlies, Kings versus Warriors, Suns versus Clippers. The Suns and the Kings both win. The Kings face the Suns while the Nuggets face the Grizzlies. The Nuggets win and the Suns win. Nuggets and Suns go to the Western Conference Finals, and I think it will be Bucks versus Suns in the final. It will be a Giannis versus KD rematch, as well as a Bucks versus Suns rematch from the 2021 finals. So if it is Bucks versus Suns, that will be exciting for multiple reasons because of the matchups. And yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. But I think the Bucks will be able to take it to the finals, and they will win in 6 games again, Bucks in 6. And I have either Giannis winning another Finals MVP or Drew Holiday. I don't think that Middleton will win will win a Finals MVP only because he's injured, or I sadly feel like he might be injured towards the finals, which could be a problem. But I think Giannis, just with the media attention and scoring 40 or 50 points a game, that Giannis will win it. Or Drew Holiday has amazing defense. One of the reasons we won the finals last time, on top of Giannis, was Drew Holiday's ability to get steals and his defense. So I think Drew Holiday, really, depending on how he plays, has an argument for finals MVP this year if his defense can stay the way that it has, and if he plays that well. Again, I'm really looking forward to seeing more Drew Holiday highlights of steals in the playoffs this year. But that's really all I have to say for March Madness, for NBA predictions, all that good stuff. I originally was supposed to have somebody with me, but they didn't, and they couldn't end up showing up. So that's why this episode was a little bit like off the rails in certain moments, because I was expecting to be able to bounce my thoughts off of somebody, but that didn't end up happening. But I still hope that this made for an entertaining episode, and hopefully I can get some guests on here soon, which we'll talk more about March Madness and playoff predictions and all that good stuff. But that's all I got for this one, guys. I will see y'all in the next one. Be sure to check out the audio on Spotify. If you're an audio listener, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next one, guys. Nathan Burnett, episode 45.